Hey music fans and musicians, this is Ari Koinuma, and today I wanted to share with you my thoughts on Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven and see what went into making this such a masterpiece that defined not only them but an entire genre, an entire decade of music. It's 8+ minutes long, so it is very long, and it's in many ways very unconventional. But Led Zeppelin sort of distilled their master touches as songwriters and performers to make this an exceptional song. And I wanted to point out all the things that I noticed that are going on in the music so that we get better enjoyment from this listening to this song. But also, if you're a musician, you can incorporate some of these ideas into your music. So this song is loosely divided into 3 different sections, and one of the peculiar things is that there's no chorus to speak of. The song goes from point A to B to C, and then that's it. But as the song travels from one to the next, there are 4 different, what I might call streams going on. And these streams each deal with different aspects of music, and they're going through a certain progression so that you can have a journey that is 4 layers deep, that's happening all simultaneously, and that's what we're experiencing as we are listening to this music. And those 4 streams are thin to thick, and intricate to bold, and exotic to familiar, and slow to fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the song from the beginning to the end, pointing out what's happening in these 4 different streams, to point out that there is indeed a journey on 4 different levels happening that's built into this song. Alright, so we all know the intro. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it played in a guitar store somewhere. And this is not a tutorial on how to play it, and other people have done that already many times. So I'm not going to really show you how to play it, but I want to point out a couple of things about this opening chord progression. It goes. So it starts out in the A minor, which is the key of the whole thing, and then transitions to C, and then goes into D, right? And D is a chord that, if you're looking at the key of A minor, it has an F natural, and then the key of a chord of D has an F sharp, so it really doesn't belong in the key of A minor. So putting the D into the A minor tonal center makes it an A Dorian harmony, or scale, or mode actually. Anyway, it goes like this. So this is actually not all that uncommon. It sounds a little more exotic than regular minor scale, but it's actually it happens fairly commonly in rock music and blues music and popular music, because it has a little more uplift than regular minor scale. You see, by raising that 6th degree from F to F sharp, it just has a little more lift to it, right? But what's exotic about this is that immediately going from F, D chord with F sharp, it goes immediately to F major with this major 7th on top. And that is like, returning back to the original key of A minor. And that whole sort of transition makes it seem somewhat even more exotic. It's not that common for the song in a course of progression to have different modes mixed in. So that's where the exoticness come from with this particular progression there. And notice emotionally, if you listen to where the discord arrives, again, you feel a sense of uplift, right? And then when you go here, and then it's like, you had an uplift, and then now you're let down. And Jimmy Page understood how these harmonies function within the overall tonality of A minor, and bring them in the key parts of the song to create a certain effect. So I'm gonna call this the uplift chord, and then this the letdown chord. And I'm gonna point out in other places in the song where these chords show up to create that effect. So following the opening section, the guitar goes into this other progression. It goes. Did you notice there's a D to F move in there? Right now it's end on D, so there's this open ending but with an uplifting sort of a feel to it. But then goes back to the same thing. So he ends the section on the letdown chord, the F. Both D and F are really not chords that we expect to end the song on. It's kind of like a cliffhanger, right? If you're watching episodic TV, but then having a progression that ends on these open-ended endings, sets up the next section. You naturally anticipate something to come after that to resolve these things that are just hanging in there. And then sometimes it's the more hopeful anticipation, and other times it's more sort of a tragic anticipation. But either way, it's an open ending, and then that's how Jimmy Page keeps us interested in the next section. Alright, so far in the beginning of the song, he just has this acoustic guitar playing pretty arpeggios, and then has a couple of parts of recorders in there. So the song is sparse, and then of course it's slow and intricate, and then I talked about the exotic nature of the harmony that's being used here. So let's see how this song transitions from here to the following sections. So when Robert Plant comes in on top of those opening chord progressions with a melody, he sings something kind of like this. So that's a very smooth and comforting kind of melody, because it just goes up the A minor scale in a stepwise motion. There's no big dramatic jumps and flashy high notes. It just kind of gently glides over the existing established chord progressions and guitar and recorder parts, right? And I think given that the song is starting out kind of low key and with sparse and exotic, intricate, all those characters, he really didn't feel the need to add anything that's just really calls attention to himself. And I think he has some place to go after that, vocally as well. It's kind of low in his range, and that I think he's just restraining himself so that he has places to go afterwards. So Robert Plant repeats that melody a few times, and then the song is ready to go, transition from A to B section, and then Jimmy Page plays the opening arpeggio it was a little more busier picking, and then goes into this section. Notice what chord this whole riff is emphasizing. It's the chord of D, the uplifting open ending chord. So after going through all the subdued part of the first A section, he just really needed to up the energy a little bit, so in comes with this riff. And then after that, he goes into this progression, goes. Okay, so that's a simpler progression than what we heard in the beginning. It just goes from C and then through G and then A minor, and then back up to C and then B, and then goes to the F chord. Again, that's the letdown open ending. So he upped it, but then now he's kind of like, okay, well, but not so much, right? This next progression is still going to be kind of a downer. And the interesting thing is, Although the chords have moved to the B section, Robert Plant is still singing the same melody on top of that he used in the A section, and then he gets a little he adds a little more variations to it, but the overall melody feels like they're pretty much the same thing. That's a really curious move because it's not that common to have the melody stay the same, but then the chord will change like completely to a different progression. And it's possible because Robert Plant's melody is a fairly safe melody. It just sticks to the, again, A minor harmony, just going up and down really smoothly. So just about any chord in the key of A minor kind of fits under that and still sounds somewhat cohesive. But anyway, so the curious thing about this is that, it's not a big, huge change in that. I mean, it did introduce an open-ended D riff as the new element and went into a new section, but then he sort of, instead of making it feel like an entirely new section, they kind of made the transition somewhat subtler by not changing the melody right away. Actually, what happens is Robert Plant will go through the whole verse melody or the main melody thing again, and then he actually changes up in the middle B section. And this is what his next melody sounds like. So that melody has a lot more gaps to it than the opening melody. That's a little jump. Again, jump. See, that's a big jump down. So having a gappy melody makes it seem more dramatic and more forceful in a way. And with this melody change also, there's another huge change to the sort of thickness of the arrangement, and that is the introduction of John Bonham coming in. And so the melody change and drums coming in at the same time in the middle of B section. So although harmonically we're still in the B section, we're still going back and forth between that the D-based riff and then the melody, the descending pattern that I showed you earlier. But it feels like it's a new section in a way because the melody changed and then drums came in, right? So it's like a new era almost. So at the end of the B section, there is a big drama coming up, and it arrives on the D chord. Right? It's from D to C going back, and then it goes to the D, C, and then B over G. But I mean, no, G over B. But anyway, the point is that it emphasized the big open-ended uplift chord, the D, and then that just again really ups the energy in, and then announces the transition from the section B to section C, which section C is the simplest of the three. It goes. Right, the guitar solo is played over that really simple and traditional chord progression of A minor to G to F. And the effect of having go through more intricate and exotic harmonies, starting out with that and then sort of coming to simpler and then finally really simple progression, really have this sense of coming home in a way. When we hear chord progressions that seem really familiar to us, even though if you may not realize that it's something that is commonly used in different songs, just our ears feel, find it very comforting in a way because it just sounds familiar and expected in some ways. And to start out with an exotic, more fresh sounding sort of harmony, to arriving to something that's bold yet familiar really sort of drives home this sense of, well, coming home, right? And And then because it's simpler, it also stands to be ballsier as well. And then this is where the band is really hitting hard. And because the song started out so sparse and slow, it just feels like such a climax to arrive to this point and then have the band hitting on all four cylinders and just really pounding out on something simple and familiar. So during the climax, the band is pounding on this same A minor, G, F, and then it inserts G back up, but inserting the G to go back to A minor is kind of important, because otherwise, the A minor to G to F, ending on F is of course the letdown chord, right? It just doesn't have the momentum. But you insert the G and then just make it the rock pounding progression. And on top of that, Robert Plant sings most dramatic line of this song. It goes something like this. Right, it's at the entirely different range of his voice, and he has a big jump. Right, and it just really sort of soars on top of everybody else, and this is just the climax. And then from there, the band sort of gets the intensity down just a little bit at the end, just settling on the again the A minor, G, F progression, and then the song ends on the F chord, which is again the open-ended letdown chord, right? And when a song sort of ends on the tonal center, you have a sense of finality in a song. And open ending gives us a lot more intrigues our imagination more than something that has a finality of going. If the song ended like that, then it's like, okay, yeah, it's done. We can pack up and go home. But then when you end on that chord, and then of course Robert Plant's lone vocal coming and finish us off. But that's just, again, is the device in which he uses to say, okay, there's more coming, stay with us, stay engaged. The song is a journey and we're taking it through to the end, right? And these open endings and changing between uplifting and then let down, they just really masterfully used to sort of really set the user up for what's to come next. So it's fairly well documented that the song sort of starts with a certain tempo and it gradually speeds up as the song goes. And in fact, Jimmy Page says, that was one of the taboos that he broke with this song, is that it was drummed into him that as a session musician, you shall never change the key tempo of a song like that. It's one thing if it's like a completely different section and goes from tempo A to tempo B, but it's a gradual shift throughout the song. And again, starting slow and then speeding up, builds the sense of urgency, right? And momentum. And but that's not all. As you saw, the song moved from intricate to bold, and the song moved from exotic to familiar, and the song obviously moved from thin to thick in terms of the instrumentation and arrangements. So if you think about like a good movie, like Star Wars, right? In the latest current trilogy, there we have Rey and Finn and Poe, to say the least. I mean, these are the three main characters, and we're seeing the character change from, within each episode, from the beginning to the end. You see these characters changing, and the story is richer because you have more than one character to focus on. It's just more layered, and there's a lot more that you can get from that experience than just focusing squarely on one character and everybody else just kind of stay the same throughout. And the same concept apply in this song, is that Jimmy Page and his bandmates built in 4 different layers that I could identify of different progression that changed from beginning to the end. And it is really an act of maturity to have the restraint to really strip down and just start really sparse and slow and intricate, so that the song has somewhere to go on multiple levels as the song progresses and travels to the end. So that, I think, is really the master stroke in this song, in that in typical songwriting arrangement, it's easy to go thin to thick, or it's easy to go low to high, that sort of thing. But to have these multiple things going on at the same time, that was a lesson that I'm taking away from this, is that creates just such a richer experience to have more than one thing changing and morphing and evolving throughout the song. So that's something that I've taken away from this song, that I'm gonna see if I can play with the idea in my future songs, and that when I'm listening to other masterpieces, I will see about does it get thin and thick, or does it go exotic to familiar, or familiar to exotic. It doesn't have to be in that direction. You could go from thick to thin, although that's less common and trickier to pull off. But in general, to have multiple layers of sort of developments or progression in a song, I think is a revelation that I found in this song. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative, and it makes you look at the song in new ways and whatnot. There is a lot going on in this song, so I'm sure that there are lots that I missed, that may go with or contradict what I said, but it's all good. If you notice something, or if you have any thoughts or comments, just leave me a comment, and I look forward to hearing from you. Alright? Thanks! I'll see you next time.
Through the green